So here we go again. Trump has just announced a list of 7 countries that are set to face 25% plus tariffs starting August 1st. Remember, Trump paused his so-called reciprocal tariffs, which weren't actually reciprocal, for 90 days. That 90-day extension or pause is set to expire this Wednesday. Now, he says that he is going to extend that again to August 1st. So that means all countries will experience these blanket tariffs on their products starting August 1st. Now, the first of his tariff letters have been sent to these 7 countries, but the administration says that there are more to come. So what we're going to do in this video is explain the situation, explain what it means, and I'll give you my thoughts. So with that said, as always, my name is Derek. I got my degree in finance. You don't have to. Let's dive right in with that list of the 7 first countries to receive the letter. Okay, so I have the list of countries here. So that is Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, South Africa, Laos, and Myanmar. Now, Japan and South Korea, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, those are all going to get 25% tariffs. And then you have South Africa, who they're going to receive a 30% tariff on their exported goods into America. And then Laos and Myanmar are going to face 40% tariffs on their exported goods into the United States. And it's like the smaller the country, the larger the tariff. And the reason for this, I'm sorry, it's not funny. The reason for this is because these reciprocal tariffs they're not reciprocal in nature, okay? True reciprocal tariff would be if your country imposes a 10% tariff on my t-shirts from my country, I'm going to impose a 10% tariff on your t-shirts until you remove yours, okay? It's an even exchange of tariffs. That's not what this was, okay? These tariffs were based on this, which when this was released, it was like economists, finance professionals, myself included, we looked at this and it was like, what is this? It was a rudimentary formula. Basically, he took the trade deficit with these countries, okay, and then he cut it in half, and that became the tariff rate. So obviously, if you have a smaller country, you're going to have a trade surplus with the United States because the United States has 300 plus million people. If you have a country of 10 or 20 million people, you're going to export more than you import from a country like the United States that has 300 million plus people. And the United States, they're going to import more. We're going to import more from a small country. There's never going to be a trade surplus with a smaller country like that. So what ends up happening with these reciprocal tariffs is you have smaller countries hit harder for no reason, really for no reason, because just how global trade works. You know, an example that was used time and time again, and obviously it's not a perfect example, it's a flawed example, but it helps highlight the fact. It's like your grocery store. You're always going to have a trade deficit with your grocery store. You're always going to buy more, even if you're like I don't know, let's say you're an electrician, okay, and you do work on their lighting, okay? You're still going to buy more over your lifetime with your grocery store than you're going to send to them. There's always going to be a trade deficit because you buy stuff from them every single day, whereas your services are only sent to them when needed. Okay, so a trade deficit by itself doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So that is just, in essence, that's what's happening on a global stage. Okay, so let's get back to the point. Okay, the point is these tariffs, these blanket tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, which aren't actually reciprocal tariffs, are going to go into effect on August 1st, allegedly. Okay, remember there was already a 90-day pause. Now, these 7 countries that I just listed, including South Korea and Japan, which are major trading partners for the United States. I mean, from everything from automotive, South Korea, they have Hyundai, Kia, and they have Samsung, which is a huge company that exports a ton of stuff in the United States, as well as Japan. I mean, that's a huge automotive industry. You have Honda, Lexus, Toyota, Mazda, Nissan, and then their luxury brands like Acura. So, look, this is going to affect the American consumer because it's going to raise prices on the goods imported from all these countries. That is just a known fact. But more so, the stock market today, at the time of filming this video, the stock market is down. The S&P 500 is down close to a percentage point. The Dow Jones is down over 500 points. That's actually quite a bit, and I'll tell you why. At this point, the market should know that Trump is likely to pause, right? There's the whole taco thing, which, very funny. The point is Trump does chicken out when it comes to these tariffs because the bond market, the stock market, the investors, nobody wants this except seemingly Donald Trump. So for the market to move down a percentage point and then the Dow Jones to move down over 500 points when it's already very clear that there's at least a 50% chance, if not higher, that he's going to pause, extend, or delay this. In fact, he already is. The deadline is Wednesday, that like in 2 days from the time of the filming of this video. He's already delaying it till August 1st. There's already a deadline, or there's already a delay for the 90-day deadline already. So it's interesting to see the market reacting negatively, so negatively, when the majority of investors probably know that there's a good chance that these are paused. Now, hey, maybe they're not. I mean, he did go through with his 10% tariffs on everybody. He did go through with 30% tariffs on China, although those were initially 100+%. So, at this point, it's very clear that I don't even know if Trump wants these tariffs himself. He originally said that these were to bring back manufacturing into the United States. It looks much more clear like they are just negotiating tactics. But eventually, if you use the same negotiating tactic over and over again, it eventually loses its muster, right? Because countries are going to just realize this is just bluffing. So, okay, now let's talk about the likely effects. One, if the tariffs actually go into effect, 25% plus, yes, that might actually bring some jobs back into America. The problem is it'll also cause job losses because companies will have to find ways to cut costs to have to deal with the higher import costs. So even if it does increase some jobs, manufacturing jobs primarily, you might actually get a net job loss because companies are instead going to automate. They're going to use more artificial intelligence than they already are because they have to find ways to cut costs because they're dealing with higher import costs for their base materials. Because remember, even stuff made here in this country, they use base materials from other countries. So you might end up with a net job loss, just like you did with the 2018 steel and aluminum tariffs that Trump implemented. It caused job gains in steel and aluminum industries, but remember, there's a bunch of companies and industries downstream that all rely on steel and aluminum. So when the prices go up, those other countries have to cut jobs, other companies have to cut jobs to make up for the added costs. And that's exactly what happened, and you ended up with a net job loss. So that's the primary thing. The second thing is if these tariffs are actually implemented to the degree that they're supposed to be implemented, you are absolutely going to see that cost passed on to the consumer. We are still waiting for the cost to be passed on to the consumer for the 10% tariffs that are currently in effect. And that's because there is these companies have supply inside the United States. Once that supply is burned through, which right about now should be taking place, you're going to see a spike in inflation. The Federal Reserve increased its inflation projections on the SEP, or their Summary of Economic Projections. Those were increased, as well as pretty much every other major forecaster has increased inflation because of tariffs. So now if you get an even higher level of tariffs, you're going to have an increase. Now, okay, what is my thought on this whole thing? My thoughts are that there's going to be exemptions. There's going to be deadline pauses. There's going to be deals worked out, and you're not going to see the brunt of these tariffs. It is very clear that even Trump himself knows nobody wants these tariffs. And then when you look at the bond market, they put in an immense pressure on Trump and on the U.S. government by increasing debt cost. There's a ton of U.S. debt that has to be not really refinanced, but rolled over this year, like close to $10 trillion. So if you skyrocket treasury costs, yields, that's not good for the U.S. government. So in my opinion, you're probably going to see deadline pauses and you're going to see exemptions. With that said, remember, companies are very good at using excuses to raise prices. Okay, we saw that in COVID. A large portion of inflation during COVID, that was real. With that said, about 30% from studies show that about 30% of that was just companies using inflation to further increase their prices above and beyond what they actually needed to do to cover their increased costs. So my big fear has always been that as long as there's tariff talk, or even if tariffs are implemented but only for a week or a month or 6 months, once you get price increases, they don't go back down. That's just how it is. These companies are not going to lower their prices again, at least not willingly, once those prices have gone up for tariffs. So in my opinion, any sort of tariff is going to be bad because the consumer is going to experience the brunt of this at the store. And even once the tariff is removed, these companies they're going to be very reluctant to lower their prices, and they won't. They won't unless it's a very heavily competitive industry. I mean, they're going to look at each other and they're going to see what the other companies are doing. And if nobody lowers prices, there's going to be no incentive to lower the price. And honestly, we've seen it time and time again. We've seen it recently when the 2020 whole, economic shutdown happened and inflation went through the roof. I mean, prices don't come down. So that is my major fear. But we'll have to wait and see. So is August 1st going to come and go and these tariffs aren't going to go into effect? Or are there going to be some sort of negotiation that takes place and some reduction or exemption? That, in my opinion, is the most likely outcome. And you're gonna be left with a net negative position. I mean, it's not going to be positive, but do I think it's going to be the brunt of 40, 50% tariffs on some of these countries? No, I don't. I don't think that's how it's going to be. I think Trump is going to negotiate something that looks like a win for him, and these tariffs are not going to go into effect as much as he says or the administration says they will. But really, honestly, we have to wait and see. And we're not going to have to wait very long because August 1st is right around the corner, which is also super scary. I feel like 2025 just started. But with that said, I hope you found this video informative. If you did, please consider subscribing. Helps the channel out tremendously. If you like personal finance, world economics, and investing, you are in the right place. So I do hope to see you in the next video. With that said, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.